Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to sell or explain anything to anyone, then do we have the 3-minute pitch show for you. Today I'll be talking with Brant Pinvidic, award-winning film director, veteran TV producer, founder and CEO of Invelop Entertain, and host of the Why I'm Not podcast and a brand new business-paced podcast, IPO. He sold more than 300 TV and movie projects, sold TV shows like Extreme Makeover, Weight Loss Edition, and Bar Rescue, which have grossed nearly $1 billion in revenue. He's also the author of a really fun and transformative read we can all benefit from, The 3-Minute Pitch. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about how to say less and get more from any pitch, conversation, or presentation. That, plus we'll talk about Bon Jovi and landscaping. Think about that one for a second. 49ers and WrestleMania, a cherry red GTO judge, Jag Fagura and Ellie Pasquale. What on earth is a butt funnel? Oh my God. And what in the world Cameron Diaz and 57 Fuzzy Bunnies in a hammock has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Brant. Are you ready to shine?
Well, I better be after that intro. Oh my God. I'm going to take you on the road with me. This is brilliant.
Woohoo!
Yeah, buddy.
Sold. All right. And I've got a TV show. I'll pitch you after this. So before we dive right into things, are goldfish really better at focusing than we are?
Well, listen, it's sort of this misnomer that the idea that our attention spans are so short, and they say it's down to 8.2 seconds and a goldfish is 9 seconds, right? But really what it is we're not mindless zombies out there wandering around with, cell phones, smartphones that have ruined us. It's actually the total opposite. Mm-hmm. People today focus more intensely and efficiently. And if you don't give them something to hold their attention, boom, they will tune you out in an 8.2 second instant.
Squirrel. On that note, what was your biggest pitching challenge after producing The Biggest Loser?
I think it was, when the TV business was at its height, it was really hard to get focused on the idea. It was a lot of hype and always trying to be bigger and better and bolder and say more and be smarter and be the expert in the room. And it wasn't until I think one of the first instances I had Simon Cowell walk out of a meeting at CBS that I was going to go in next. And behind me walked in the lobby Mark Burnett. And I realized I was sandwiched between these two monsters. It's early in my career.
Giants.
And I was just so intimidated on a personal level that I thought, the president of the network is not going to be entertained or impressed by anything I say other than I just got to get this idea out. So I got in that room and I literally just talked about the idea, how it worked, why it was going to be good for CBS, and how we would make the show. And I was out of that meeting in like 9 minutes. They bought the show. And I was like, that was one of the best pitches I had ever done. And I started doing it very similar to that. And the irony is I got this reputation of being this great, showman and this great pitch person and this unbelievably sort of like charismatic executive that you always wanted to hear a pitch. And I was like, I'm not doing very much. I'm literally sticking to the idea and the core of the idea. And so I started to develop this system of like, wow, I could really see the power in simplified information.
It sounds like you're saying I'm not doing very much, but maybe doing very little is actually doing a lot more.
Yeah, and I make the joke, like it's taken me 20 years to learn how to say things in 3 minutes, because it does take some work and it does take a little practice and some structure. And I think what the book, The 3-Minute Rule, really walks you through is here's a structure to layer your information to somebody else so they understand it the same way you do. You got to feed it to them piece by piece because you've been living with your information for a very long time and you know it so perfectly. And so everything seems valuable to you. And what you got to learn is how to lay the pieces together like a breadcrumb trail of information so that they get to the point where that information is going to be valuable to them as well.
I like it. And in a sense, you're also flipping it on its head. We're going to give a lot of examples here today. But before we do that, let's talk about the first step in creating a master list. What's that mean?
Really the basic is you got to boil it down. And I use bullet points and Post-it notes, right? And I've taken companies that have been in business doing the same thing for 40 years with the same message. And I was like, well, let's start from scratch. And you basically force yourself to 2 or 3 word descriptions of your ideas and everything of value. And what you'll find is this list of 30 bullet points contains all the information you need. I always say the story that you're trying to tell from A to Z doesn't need every letter of the alphabet, right? People understand that. So once I get that list where someone has those bullet points, and then I help extend them into what's called statement of value, I can actually show them how to okay, this is what you say first, then this is what comes next, and these are things you don't say at all. And that's sort of a crucial distinction.
What is a statement of value?
Statement of value is where you expand sort of your bullet point, right? So if it was like my bullet point for the Biggest Loser might have been competition series. So I would expand that to be competition series where people compete to lose weight. Like there's a good statement that I explain, right? And so I need to say that at some point. It just where do I put that in the context of the pitch itself?
So if we go back to when you were pitching after The Biggest Loser, you didn't have this fully formulated at this point, but you got an idea that you had to be sharp, you had to take these key points.
Yeah.
What was the basic of the pitch?
So it really came down to the Extreme Makeover Weight Loss Edition when I sold that pitch. Because it was such a complicated. The Biggest Loser was pretty simple. Like you could get it really quickly. It's a competition series. You're competing to lose weight. There were some really good nuances to that, but that was more like seizing a moment in time that happened to happen. And I didn't even make that pitch. That was pitched way before I got to the company. We just ended up producing the company. So, or the show. So that worked out really well. But when we did Extreme Makeover Weight Loss Edition, it was so complicated because it's a year-long transformation. It's only one contestant per episode. And when we were trying to form that pitch, it took us months to try to get it. And I was able to sell it in a room in less than 5 minutes because I had overcooked it for so long and that's literally what it was. It's contestants that are too big for The Biggest Loser. We follow them for an entire year while they lose weight. Each episode, each night on television, it will be the largest weight loss on TV history. And once I explained those first few pieces, the buyer who's as smart about television as I am or more could start to fill in the gap. So then I just had to talk a little bit about how we were going to do it. We rigged their cameras at home. We have one trainer that travels from each person and we have a rotating crew. So then he understood what it was, how it was going to work. We had big success with The Biggest Loser and we were the company to do it. And I was in and out of that meeting in less than 5 minutes. And it was the biggest transformational moment in my career.
Woohoo!
Yes.
And I said biggest transformational moment because that's how you started to get this name and you started to become I can't believe I'm going to use this term, but a hit man in a sense of your pitches.
Yeah, listen, we had a good run and sometimes the ball bounces your way, but there was a time when I really was literally saying less and getting more. And we were selling almost everything we went out with. And it was so effective because I was taking out more shows. It used to take us, a month and a half to develop a show, and we'd spend $25,000 making material and decks and videos. And we had taken that process down to about 2 minutes. And we were spending about $5,000 and we were getting twice as many or 3 times as many shows in the market. Guess what? You do that, you sell more stuff. And the buyers were able to understand the concepts cleaner. They were able to pitch it up to somebody else. I always talk about the decision by committee. That's what everybody is facing in the world today. And if you can make your pitch mimic the way they're going to have to explain it to somebody else, I call it the rationalization story, how they're going to rationalize being interested, you'll have infinite more success.
And what did it do for your marriage?
It's interesting because people ask me that a lot because my communication skill in general became better and more effective. I found I wasn't repeating myself as much. I wasn't getting as excited or angry or elevated in my conversations because I was able to recognize how to just simplify the information and just let the information do the work, not trying to color it, not trying to add things to it, just being simple. And once you develop a little bit of that confidence, it's kind of infectious.
Excellent. So let's go from infectiousness. Let's talk about the WHAC method, WHAC. What is it? What can you tell us about it?
So it really stems from the way we make decisions as sort of human beings. We have to conceptualize, so we understand what it is that we're looking at. Then we contextualize, as in how does it relate to me and what can I get out of it? And then we actualize, meaning like, okay, I want to engage further or I'm not interested, right? And that's a very natural process. And as anybody listening or watching is going to know, like sometimes someone will come to influence you or pitch you or present you something, and in like the first 10 seconds, 15 seconds that you're not interested. So the 3-minute rule kind of helps you try to extend that decision-making process as long as you can till about 3 minutes if you're lucky, so that they're making decisions based on information. So the WHAC method helps you put it in those categories. WHAC. W is what is it? Just the simple core of the concept. H is how does it work? So explain the actual functionality of how it works, how you achieve your concept. Then it's are you sure? And this is where you use those facts and figures and logic and reason, effectively validating your conceptual pieces. Now, a lot of people want to use that up front, and those things don't have value to other people until they understand, right? They have to understand the basic concept first and how it's going to work. Then they'll be interested in validating it for themselves. And then, are you sure? I mean, or then can you do it? Can you actually pull this off? Who are you? What's your background? Where have you been? What have you been doing? When can I order it? How much does it cost? All of those things are after people have a genuine interest in engaging. And I see a lot of companies, particularly in like biotech, life science,
Yeah.
or oil and gas, that want to start their presentation with, my name's Bob. I've been a CEO of a Chevron, affiliated corporation for 19 years. And my head of production is this. And they'll spend 6.5 minutes explaining who they are and who's on the board and all of their background. Exactly. And you're like, okay, I still don't even know what you do yet. So why is that all relevant? And it is relevant, but it's so much more relevant when I believe in your message and what you're trying to do. Then if you can come over the top and be like, and I've done this before, and I know how to do this, and I have a team that's going to put it together, like, then that becomes very valuable.
And then that leads into the can you do it?
Yeah. And that's sort of like, can you deliver it? That's basically what it is. It's like, can you actually deliver it? And it's like, you could explain that early, sure. But it's like, why do I give a crap if you can deliver it or who you are or where you've been until I understand if I even want it or I'm interested or how it even works or like, is it real? Like once I get those things in an understood state,
Mhm.
then the rest has value. And it's really about building value in the pitch or presentation or any communication.
So it's interesting when I talk about people about coaching, always the first thing that I'm diving into is what are their challenges? I haven't described my what is it? And it sounds like this kind of flips that on its head so that
Yeah.
we have actually created the value and then we get into what their specific needs are.
Yeah. And that's just because the audience has changed. I mean, think about how it's been in the last 10 years. We're bombarded with marketing and ads and being sold to every second of every day of your life. So, anybody at home thinking about it, when someone promises you something or tells you something that they're going to solve, is your instinct to lean in and be like, ooh, tell me more? Or is it like, oh God, eye roll, not interested? Like, how many clickbait videos have you clicked on and now you're like sour and skeptical of everything, right? So, what you find is the level of confidence that you portray to others is really based on how many words you need to use to get your message across. The more words you use, the more you're trying to sell somebody, the less confident you feel, the less confident you look, and the less they're going to be interested. And it's counterintuitive, but it's much easier. It's hard to be the loudest person in the room and overshout all the marketing efforts that's going on out there. It's easier to be simple, and that clarity is so compelling to people right now.
So, and you talk about story trumping style, meaning even if you can almost trip over your words, but you keep it concise.
Yes. Yeah, and it's hard for a guy who like, in the let's do lunch Hollywood world, for people to take me seriously in the beginning of like I'm telling them that you're, that the actual substance trumps the style, and they just can't get over the fact that like a Hollywood guy would say that. And it's like, no. Doesn't matter what tie you wear, doesn't even really matter how you look or how you present it. It's like, what is the information? Like just get to it. That's all I care about. Just give me the information. And I find with my clients, a lot of times my first thing is just stop talking. Like you've said enough already. Let's just stop.
So, and let's go from there because I don't get it.
Yeah. I like this. I like this guy. You say you're in. You got it. Yeah.
What's the I don't get it question, and how can that help us?
Well, again, it stems from the idea that you've been living with your information for a very long time. You understand everything.
Yeah.
And so what I do is when I work with a client and they're explaining what the company is, every single phrase, I basically stop them and say, okay, hold on. I don't understand that. I don't get that. And so it's super annoying and it's painful and ugly, but it forces them to explain it like I was a child.
Mhm.
And they actually find their way to the core of the information. So, and I would say to this, anybody at home listening, if you've got an idea or something you're pitching or you're conveying or the way your business, product, or service works, imagine if you had to explain it every single sentence and explain what that meant. It's like, we're an IR firm that helps public companies. What do you mean? I don't get it. What's IR mean? Oh, it means investor relations. Well, why would I need investor relations? And then they go through, and you will find in that process some gold. You'll have mined gold where you realize, oh, that's the core of the concept. And you've probably glossed over it. You've probably surrounded it with beautiful words and clever context that helps you feel good about the way you're explaining it, but it's not the breadcrumb trail that really will have the effect you want.
Can you use the example for Catch a Contractor with us?
Yeah, Catch a Contractor was a great sort of piece, and the idea was that we were going to, trap contractors that did a bad job.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, why would we do that? Well, because everybody's worked with a bad contractor. And it's like, okay, but why does that matter? Well, it's like your home is your biggest asset and people get taken advantage of. Well, how does that happen? Well, because contractors have so much more information than you do and they seal. So I kept going down that process. And when you get to the end, you realize, okay, like what the show is on a human level is like one of our most vulnerable moments. People who are supposed to be experts, we hand over everything to them and they take it for advantage. And everybody's had that happen. And we're going to put a sting together that's going to catch bad contractors and get people retribution. And like the more you dive down, that's how you find out what the core elements and why that show particularly would be interesting.
Awesome. And you can take that, make that into a Twitter version of your idea. It's kind of like an
Yeah.
elevator pitch.
Yeah, we call it a log line in entertainment, and the idea is it's just like, and it's been used, forever, but all the networks are always asking for a log line, which is like, okay, well, just give me 2 lines and explain what it is so I know what we're talking about. And when I work with a client, I try to get them to like, could you get your business into a Twitter version, not the big fancy 260 characters or whatever they allow you now, like the old version, 144 or whatever it was. And it's very hard for people because it's easier to tell somebody in 10 minutes than it is in 1 minute. It's easier to talk for 30 minutes than it is 3 minutes. And so working on that sort of log line is really valuable.
And you say easier to talk for 30 minutes than 3 minutes, which gets us to the logical conclusion that people don't usually make. Confused people don't buy anything.
That's right. Yeah. And it's hard for you to understand how confusion happens because again, you live with the information, the information. I had this experience. I'm supposed to be an expert in this, and my book opening, as you know, was like, hey, the average business book has a 14-page intro, but the average book reader decides if they're going to read the book in the first 4 pages. So I've got 4 pages to make you want to read this book, and I thought, oh, that's very clever, and now I'm going to show how this, and that, by the way, takes about 3 minutes to read, coincidentally, because there is science behind why 3 minutes we make decisions. But when I first wrote it, it was 9 pages long. And I was like, whoa, okay, no problem. I'll cut it down. I worked like crazy. I got it down to 7 pages. And there was a moment when I was like convincing myself that, you know what, this intro for this book is so good. It is so well written and so cleverly put together. And the information here is so valuable. I have to leave it like this. I must leave it like this. And it's because I had just written the entire book. I had 13 chapters of what I thought was gold, and it was so fresh and in my mind, I could not cut my children away. That's what it was. And even after I did that, I finally got it down to the 4 pages. I had other things that I still was in love with, and I didn't realize, but I had pushed them into the first chapter because I still wanted to say them. And it wasn't till, by the way, the book you have, the early print, has these 2 horrible pages in it. The very first 2 pages of that book that you have for chapter 1 has now since been deleted. Thank goodness I found them because they were not valuable. But it was so hard for me to clip information.
You know what's fascinating is because we're going along the general outline of the book, and I went through this whole book, and I absolutely loved it, except that I skipped some of the early stuff in chapter 1.
I know. Isn't that crazy? I was so devastated and I called the publisher and I was like, oh my God, like we have to change this. Like we have to change it. The first 2 pages are completely useless. And he's like, no, let me read them through again. And he's like, well, I mean, they don't really provide anything, but they're actually well written and everything. I was like, it's called the 3-minute rule. It's about simplifying your information. I can't have the first chapter be like this. So luckily they went back and they got it. And there's 2 pages clipped right out of it. The whole front 2 pages of your chapter 1 are gone. So
woohoo!
That's how hard it is when you live with information and you understand it so well. It is really hard to find the balance of like, okay, what do I want to say and what needs to be said? And those are big distinctions.
That was actually my evening last night is we're everywhere in the world. This show is just a phenomenal horse. but we just got invited to be on Unity Church Radio, and they need our segments to be in two 26-minute pieces. No matter how
Right.
long your show is, it's got to be 26 by 26. And so last night I'm doing a Dr. Joe Dispenza show, and I'm going, but that's important, and that's important, and I want to keep this piece in here, and it's got to be nuanced and said just that way. No, you've got to let it go.
Yeah, yeah. It just takes a little training. And as you've read in the book, like you can do it if you follow the structure. You'll be able to figure that out. And it's not like you're going to lose all that information necessarily. But some of it just has come later when someone's interested and engaging in the next conversation or another meeting or whatever it is.
And you talk about, an amateur director versus a pro director. Amateur director leads this angry person along. They grab the keys, they do the this, they do the that, they do the other before they finally end up knocking on the door. They've got sweaty hands from the steering wheel. But we don't need all that detail, do we?
That's right. Yeah, and that's the thing. Both directors shoot all the same scenes. Mm-hmm. But a good director knows which scenes to put in the movie so you get the story. And the other director, an average amateur director, will be putting every single letter from A to Z in there. And it's just not necessary. And today, it's almost the kiss of death. The worst mistake you can make is to tell the audience something they already know. That Aaron Sorkin was saying that. But it's true. And it's worse now because people are just, they have detest for people wasting their time. You can repel people so fast with that.
It might mean the editor is perhaps the most important person on the project, and then learning how to bring that editor into your mind.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, it's tough. And it's you need extra people. You need fresh eyes. You need people to sort of be impartial for
Excellent.
Sure.
So I'm concerned the fire alarm might go off here very shortly. What's the fire alarm test?
It's a good one because you think, again, your information is super clear. And what I say all the time as I'm building these things is, if you were to stop your presentation at 2 minutes and the fire alarm went off, what would people retain? What would they do? So I'd always take them through that process and they figure they've got their 3-minute pitch down. And I was like, okay, let's back up time. If the fire alarm went off and you had to clear the building and your buyer was outside, and then they're like, the fire department came in and said, okay, we're all clear. We can go back in. Does your buyer want to go back in and hear more? And if they can't go hear more, do they have enough to tell somebody else? And if you've got information that you're saving or you haven't put clearly, like that's a big alarm bell. And this actually happened to me when I was pitching at MTV. The fire alarm went off in the middle of the pitch, and 1,000 people are outside, and eventually they let us back in. And the network president that was in there decided like now he's going to go do something else because there's so much chaos. He didn't get back in the room. I didn't sell the show, and I realized I was in that room for 15 minutes at least. And he didn't really understand what I was talking about because I didn't get there. And I'll actually have people do it at 3 minutes, at 2 minutes, at 1 minute. I mean, can't get all your information in 1 minute, but is your best information up there? Do they have enough information to come back? Will they come back in the building if the fire alarm goes off?
So let's talk about a 5-minute pitch worth millions. Tell me about the 49ers and WrestleMania.
Oh man, that is one of my favorite stories because, as a kid growing up in Canada and moving to the United States, and I worked with Vince McMahon and the WWE in a bunch of projects, and we did a great show together, and it was great. And I worked with the San Francisco 49ers, which was a treat. And the president and I became really good friends, and Parag's a great guy, and we were always doing stuff. And I was so surprised to learn how much business has to be done for a team in their stadium. They only play 10 home games. Mm-hmm. So you can't run $1 billion or $2 billion stadium with 10 home games. You got to fill it with other things. And they desperately needed WrestleMania for that first year, the big sort of kickoff of Levi Stadium when they built the stadium. And as we went through what his pitch was going to be, it was this moment where I realized, looking at the WAC method, that what it was not really about the stadium. Mm-hmm. Every single owner, Jerry Jones was going to be coming in right after them to talk about the stadium in Dallas or wherever they were going to be. And everybody would be saying the same thing. I hold this many seats. Our city is really excited for you. We're going to do this. And it's just like, well, Vince McMahon doesn't need you to show up in Connecticut to explain that. Yeah. The stadium's the same as it was last year. So what Parag did was so brilliant in the way we structured that pitch was was Silicon Valley, where Levi Stadium is the center of the digital world, and the world has gone digital. And you can associate your brand at the center of that, where Facebook and Salesforce and Twitter, everybody has their head offices there. The WWE wants to be in this moment at this time. And that was like, oh, okay. And then when we started explaining about how they had this new app that they developed in the stadium that allowed people to order merchandise and food from their seat during the event and how big it had been at the game so far, Vince McMahon was able to put it together. It's like, oh, okay. If you don't have to go line up in the concourse, if you don't have to like leave your seat, I'll sell more merchandise. I'll make money. And that effectively was really what the pitch was. And, WrestleMania was at Levi Stadium that year. So it was a big win.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
So let's talk about hooks. What exactly is a hook? And in this case, and in general, why don't you want to lead with your hook?
It's a great question because the hook of your story, you would say in Hollywood, but everybody understands what that is. It's the hook of the story. It's like, what about your information excites you the most? What about your pitch is sort of that thing that's like, yeah, I can get you to, you can lose weight and eat whatever you want. Whatever that hook is that you want to be, it's the most important thing and the thing that really nails it. And what people do want to do is they want to start with that. But really what that does, it leads you down this road of what I call state and prove. State and prove is where you start with a grand gesture and a big promise, and then you prove it to them throughout the next however long you're talking. Today, it's like that is the kiss of death, because as soon as you state something to somebody in a grand way, they're looking to disprove it. Poke holes, find strings.
We are the best company for X, Y, or Z.
Right. And my instinct is like, really? Okay, go ahead. And then even if you do a great pitch, I'm still thinking like, well, that's pretty good, but not the best. And you just don't want that. So what I teach people is how to inform and lead and lead them through that. So great example, Bar Rescue.
Yeah.
The hook of the pitch for Bar Rescue is that John Taffer is the Gordon Ramsay for nightclubs and bars. Mm-hmm. And I could have gone into the room and opened with that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pitching this great new show. I want you to meet John Taffer. He is the Gordon Ramsay for nightclubs and bars. Now, my audience at the time, the network would have been like, oh, really? Okay, well, go ahead, prove it, right? And that's not how I pitched that show. What I pitched the show was I talked about the concept of the show and how Bar Rescue was going to work. I talked about John and his history in the nightclub business, how it's a science and how he knows more than anybody in this business. And I let him show a little bit of his brash, in-your-face kind of personality.
And you also talked about a butt funnel.
Which I'm going to get. You like that. I know you love the butt funnel. It's hilarious. But what was really important is I let the audience, my network buyer, lead to the hook. And that's what I always tell people. If you've got a hook, what you want to do is build your information so your audience knows the hook before you say it. Yeah. So you almost don't have to say it, because the network president said to me, he's like, so we can make him our version of Gordon Ramsay for nightclub and bars. And it was because I led that information to that hook, right?
And what's brilliant about that is they made the connection rather than you making the connection.
That's right.
It's now their idea. They've not only got the buy-in, they think it's coming from themselves.
That's right. And it's like, well, you made the hook yourself. So somehow the information got to you, or you came up with that idea. Yeah. And so it's like, well, why did I think John was the next Gordon Ramsay? So there must have been a reason for me. And I basically walked the audience through my pattern of understanding. And once they understood the show, the way he works, what he had to offer, they could come up with the same conclusion I did. That's not rocket science. It's just a matter of leading, informing and leading your audience. So for sure.
So now we've got to go to the butt funnel.
Now we've got to go to the butt funnel. So the butt funnel is what I call the edge of your story. It's the thing that pushes you over the edge, pushes your audience over the edge. And the idea of if the hook is something that your audience should know by the time you say it, the edge is something that they wouldn't have thought of. Yeah. And so in Bar Rescue, it was what was called the butt funnel. And my pitch had been leading up to how scientifically advanced John's methodology was in nightclubs and bars. You think that it's random. Two bars right beside each other, and one does a ton of business, the other one doesn't, and they serve the same thing, same drinks. What's the difference, right? And John pulled out a blueprint of a bar, and he said, let me show you how I do this. And every bar that successfully has what's called a butt funnel. Butt funnel is, when you go to a bar, there's sort of almost like a track, a circuit that you'll walk around to see who's where, and there's openings where you sort of walk around and see the lay of the land. Well, a butt funnel, what John does, he designs the bar so that there's a narrow area where two people can't walk by side. You actually have to turn sideways to go through each other. And what happens is you turn sideways and your butts touch. And when men and women touch butts, they send off endorphins. People with endorphins have more enjoyment. People who are enjoying themselves stay longer. People who stay longer spend more money. They spend more money. Bar makes more money. And he showed right there, this is how I design a butt funnel. And the look on the network faces was like stunned. That was when the show was sold, in that moment. And it wasn't like I couldn't explain the butt funnel as part of the concept.
Yeah.
It's none of that. It is that piece of information that once you understand the show and what we're gonna do and how big John is, it's that thing that they wouldn't have known that says, "Oh man, this is great." It's like that. It's like you bang on the table and be like, "Oh my goodness, can you believe it? Can you feel it?" Right? And that's that moment that you lead to.
Let's go from "Can you feel it" to butt funnels and Bon Jovi.
Yeah. um, the Bon Jovi show was a pivotal moment because in our world, we spend a lot of time telling everybody why something's going to be great and how
Yeah.
it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And you get caught up a little bit in everything is roses and sunshine.
Yep.
And if you become good at pitching and presenting, you kind of get the idea you can push past everything. And I was really guilty of that. And I developed the show with John Bon Jovi, and we were really excited about it. The idea of the show was that rock stars is called If I Wasn't a Rock Star. We're going to take a look and live the life that they might have lived had they not become rock stars, little sliding doors kind of thing. And very exciting. And I'd worked with John on the idea and very professional. And then he called me like 2 days before we were pitching and said, "Hey, can I have breakfast with you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, he loves me. We're going to have breakfast together." And I just remember we're in Santa Monica and it's just Bon Jovi and I. The two of us at breakfast. And I'm like,
And you
I
even
have
went
made
in. You went in and you said, "I'm waiting for a table for two with Bon Jovi."
Yes, I went in and said, "Table for two, John Bon Jovi, please." And it was just like, it was so exciting. And like, I could see people walking by, like looking at him and be like, "Who's that cool guy that gets to have breakfast with John Bon Jovi?" But it was, it was great. And I was on a high.
Yeah.
And we were talking about football and other things. And then the whole meeting turned to absolute trash in like 1 second. And he said, "Hey, I have a huge problem with the show. I don't think it's going to work." And it's like, oh, we're supposed to be pitching the network in like 2 days. Like
Yeah.
I was in like panic mode. And he just basically said, like, "You guys are saying that if I wasn't a rock star, I'd be a landscaper because I like to be outside and work with my hands and I'm gonna go do this stuff." And he's like, "I would have never been a landscaper. Like, I don't like dirt. I don't work with my hands. Like, I've never thought of anything ever other than music since as long as I can remember."
Mhm.
And I've talked to a bunch of my other friends in this business that you want to cast. None of them would ever have been non-rock stars. And you talk about Lenny Kravitz. Like, Lenny Kravitz would not have joined the army. Like, I know that's what we're saying, but yeah, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was so panicked because my plan was to just push past this issue because I knew that, of course. I made this thing up. But I was just going to push past it. I was just going to power through with how great this idea was. But the problem was I needed John Bon Jovi to be in the room at ABC and NBC and say, "Hey, I love this idea and I'm going to do this. How exciting is this going to be?" And he's basically looking at me. He's like, "I'm not doing that." So we just decided that I was going to like, "Listen, I can't solve this. We're just going to talk about this in the room with the network.
Yeah.
Like it's a hurdle to overcome. Like bring it right up front and center."
Love it.
And part of it was because I thought that was a good idea, and the other part is that at least I could get him in the room and we could go from there. Like it was the less of two evils at the moment, a little bit. But we got into the room, and ABC was the first pitch, and we went through this, and I literally said, "The problem is, John." The network president and John Bon Jovi are both named John. The problem is, network John, is
Yeah.
that Bon Jovi has never thought of doing anything ever other than music. So by putting him in these situations, it's not real.
Awkward.
So it could come across to the audience that he's just making fun of like regular people that have to do real jobs.
Yeah.
Which is about the worst way I could have explained it. Like I wanted to make it seem like this is really bad.
But
And the network John was like, "Yeah, but you know what? Like if we take it carefully and we have some real genuine moments, it could be really interesting." And he like, "Mr. Bon Jovi, like I'm sure you've had moments in your life that you've missed because of your rock starness that regular people doing regular jobs get to experience, and there could be some real genuine moments." And then John's like, Bon Jovi's like, "Yeah, that's really cool." I'm going to change John in the story the next time I tell the story. But it was really cool. And I was like, wow, that worked really, really well. And Bon Jovi was able to say, and I talked to Lenny Kravitz and he'd never joined the army. And so I got to talk about how we're going to cast these huge other rock stars.
Yeah.
And that they're so serious about the show. And it just like it elevated everything. And so I started to bring those negative elements to every pitch. I'd sit with my development office and say, "Hey, why would the network pass on this show? Let's go through that." You can't believe how fast people will throw those things out,
So many decades ago, one of my first jobs out of college, I ended up selling Fords. And for my first month, I did incredibly well. I was salesman of the month. Second month, I learned what they were doing behind closed doors, and I couldn't sell a single car. But one of the keys in the first month is I would let my customer know I'm brand new. I don't know what I'm doing. You're going to have to help me out here.
Right. Yeah, because it goes to the core of what I say now if I'm speaking or I'm on stage. I'm saying like there's no other option. Like there are three possibilities when you have something that's negative. If you ask yourself honestly, what do you
Yeah.
hope your audience doesn't find out? There's three possibilities. Number one is you bring it up
Yeah.
and deal with it right there in the moment.
Yeah.
Number two is they bring it up and then you have to chase trying to explain it. And number three is nobody brings it up, but your audience knows it, they think about it, and they probably think you were hiding it or weren't aware of it. And there's no fourth option where they didn't realize that there was a negative or a string or a problem or an issue. Everybody knows these things. They're going to find out. So you're far better off to bring it up front and center. Deal with it. Let the problem be their problem. Let them go overcome it. Because if it was a deal breaker, you wouldn't be there. Like you obviously still did your job, even though you were new and didn't know what you were doing. If that was such an impediment, you wouldn't be doing it, right? If I believed that the show wouldn't work, I wouldn't be sitting in the room pitching it. There's challenges. Yes, there's problems with casting. Yes, there's problems with production. It's too expensive, whatever it is. But I believe we have the solution. But I'm not going to try to pretend that you don't know what the issues or the challenges are.
So you could literally even bring it up when it comes to pricing, when it comes to cost, and get them on your team of figuring this out.
Yeah, and I actually will train people to bring it up right in those first 3 minutes, like right off the bat.
Beautiful.
Because you're never going to get away from it.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that can happen is your audience thinks you're hiding it or you're delusional or whatever it is, because if they feel like they're being sold or that you're desperate, because that's the absolute kiss of death, right? The more passionate you become about things, certainly opinions, the more dangerous it is, right? Because if the more you do that, the more they feel that you'll say anything, and that the more desire you have for your outcome, the more likely you'll turn your passion into promotion. And when people feel that you're being promotional, they feel that everything you say is in the end goal of having them say yes or do that. And once they discount that, it's pretty hard to overcome that.
I used to be in that. I way crossed that line in my advertisements early on in the show, and something just went wrong, and I just had to stop and pull it back. I think my wife was going, "I'm going to throw up if I hear you say something like that," because I crossed that line from passion to promotion. Let's go from there and tell me, Rocky, what's the all is lost moment?
Well, it's really like so cleanly seen in movies and TV. It's the moment where your hero has lost everything and now you're ready for the big sort of climax. It's the moment when Rocky is on the canvas and he doesn't look like he's going to get up. Now, nobody gets out of their seat and like, okay, well, the movie's over. I'm done with this. Like, what a bum. In the Shawshank Redemption, when it's at its lowest, Andy Dufresne is at his lowest. You're not like, well, just kill it. It's over. Forget it. Not interested in you. That moment brings you into the story one step closer, and you want the outcome. You know how the movie's going to end. Rocky 5 is going to end the same way. He's going to win. Like, you know how you're going to feel, but you want it that way. And I always make the thing about like one of my great friends was a big writer, wrote The A-Team, and it's like, every single episode ended the same. CSI, they all end the same, but you want it that way because we've created this moment of everything's bad, everything's lost, and you want that success. And that's why I say to use your negative. You can create that little moment, right? Where it's like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if I can deliver this on time. I'm worried about, and the audience, if you've done it right, will go, no, wait, hold on a second. Come on, we can figure this out. Like, let's go. Like, they desire your conclusion.
You're actually bringing them into a Joseph Campbell arc. You're bringing them right into the arc.
Yeah, and it's not difficult. It doesn't require fancy language. It just requires straight information, clearly and cleanly delivered, without fluff.
From there, let's go to Freebird and It's All About And Then.
Yeah, so what I do a lot of times is I help people build that and then story. And Stephen Cannell, the writer of A-Team, really taught me that, which is, M. Night Shyamalan or, fancy writers that do that kind of stuff. Tarantino use really complicated storytelling devices. And, there's one Tarantino. So maybe you could do that. But really what the best
and you say, don't Tarantino your presentation.
That's what I say. Don't Tarantino your presentation. Like, you want your audience to be saying, and then what happens? And when you're presenting, it's like, so first this is how it works. Mm-hmm. And then we go over here. And then this is going to happen. And then you'll understand that. And it's so linear. Yeah. And it's not clever. And it's not even sexy. And that was the sort of, in a writer's world, that's the problem. Like, writing that core story is not sexy. Writing Lost is sexy because it's so convoluted and weird and you can do anything
Yeah.
and it's sexy. Writing CSI or NCIS is not a sexy gig. It's a linear story. But in a picture presentation, the audience wants a linear story. And like for every Pulp Fiction, there's 10,000 movies that have follow that linear story and work. And like, yeah, there's a couple that break away with it, but not very many. So you don't want to be the Tarantino of trying to pitch and present your idea.
Telephone test.
The telephone test, what I do in the telephone test is it's funny because it always, it's always a good laugh is that if you think your pitch is clear, no problem. Pick up the phone literally and call somebody, pitch them the idea and say, like, I need you to call one of your friends, pitch it to them. Then I need to have them call their friend and pitch it to them and then give them this number and have them call me back. And 3 degrees is all you need to get back a pile of junk when they call. And what you'll find is it's a painful exercise and you don't really want to do it. That's the other thing. Is like you call one person, and I've done it where we bought $100 Starbucks gift cards to give to people like, hey, if you get 2 people to do this and call me back, I'll give you this gift card.
Sweet.
But because that information is so valuable. When the phone rings and somebody picks it up who you don't know and they're like, hey, my name's Dave and I was told to call this number and pitch you this idea. And they pitch back like nothing like you sent out. You're like, what the hell just happened? But when the time the phone rings and they nail it,
Yeah.
it's like winning the lottery. It's like winning the super. It is. I have seen many grown men in fancy business suits like jumping up and down when the phone rings because we did it for like 2 or 3 days during a session. It was really fun.
So businessmen dancing to Cameron Diaz in a hammock with 57 buddies.
57. Yeah. That's how I talk about how the opening of a story works and how setting the mood and persuasion. Jimmy Fallon was an absolute master of this. And most comedians are because they set up a story and then give you a punchline and they work that system. And Jimmy Fallon in pitching the show called That's a Record had used this YouTube clip of these guys setting a world record for sitting in a hammock with bunny rabbits. And his friend Cameron Diaz had said like it was the funniest clip I'd ever seen. And he said like we should break this on my show. And so he had Cameron Diaz and they broke the record on the show. And what was interesting was before we even got to what the show was, Jimmy had set up the story of where you kind of had to see this. You kind of like it kind of had to stop the meeting and go to the computer screen and like, you've seen the clip, right? Oh, here, let me show you. And we weren't talking about what the show was yet. Yeah. But by the time we were like, okay, so here's the show, we had dictated what the audience was supposed to be feeling and what they're supposed to be thinking. And that's a real piece of the callback that those guys are really good at. And I show you in the book of how to like set up the emotion that you want to people to be feeling when they hear your pitch. Really important.
Awesome. What's a reason for being?
And that's a little bit of like in that setup. It's literally as why am I here today? Like, and usually the story is how I discovered this, how I discovered why this is a good idea. What brings me into your office today to explain this to you? Something must have happened along the way because you might have had a different job. You might have been doing something else, but why are you here? What made you think that this was good or effective? And I combine that with the callback, which is like the opening is like, here's my reason for being, why I think it was good, when I thought it was good, and then after you've explained it, you're like, and here's when I knew it was good. Here's the anecdote that shows you how it worked and how I like fell in love with this idea.
Excellent. And I love the end that doesn't end.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to do with the show. It'd be kind of awkward.
It'd be a little awkward. But a lot of people ask me, how do I conclude this? And like, okay, fireworks, July 4th kind of thing. And it's like, no, just stop talking. If you've said enough and you've said it right, you don't need a fancy ending. Because what you don't want to do is like, if you've seen Shark Tank, you know how there's always that entrepreneur who has a good pitch. And at the end they go, so come on, sharks, which one of you wants to swim with me? Or whatever cheesy line. And you're like, oh, right. Ugh. And you can see the sharks roll their eyes. And what you don't want to do is remind your audience that this is something you've rehearsed and built and you're pitching 5 times and you did it 5 times yesterday. And it's like, it pulls them out of the scene. And if you're building what you're talking to them, you're having a conversation, you don't want to like put some button on the end that reminds them, okay, this is the pitch and it's over. You can like, and if you've seen me do, if any of your audience see me on a keynote or whatever, like I will just put up the logo, like that's it. Like I'm done. I've said everything.
I can remember the second big talk that I ever did. The first big talk, huge talk, went great. The second talk, complete and total crash and burn. And I made a decision in that day which has changed every talk I've ever given since, which was to kill off the slides and the PowerPoint. They're done, they're dead, they're gone. Tell us about the dad test.
You know, it was funny because my dad, before PowerPoint was even invented, was, in this insurance sales sort of industry, and his car got broken into,
Yeah.
lost all his luggage and his slides, and he had to go to this meeting. There was no other like email me the slides, send it to FedEx. There's none of that. So he walked into this room without the slides that he'd been using for years, and he just had a conversation with people and explained it without the slides. Best pitch of his life. And he realized that he was using the slides as a crutch and not as a sledgehammer. And when I talk, I say you want to use your slides like a sledgehammer. You want them to be powerful and assist you, not like an anchor that drags you down. And so I hate PowerPoint. I hate the way people use PowerPoint. I've done it badly. Everybody's done it badly.
Yeah.
If I could just, if the book, all of the other things in the book, if you didn't take any of that away, if you just took how to make your PowerPoints less annoying for people, I will feel like I've done good for the world.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, go from there to PowerPoint to red lipstick.
That's that thing my mom always says to me when she hears if I'm asking her about a pitch or something that I'm doing or presenting something. She'll say, "Ooh, sounds like you're putting red lipstick on," and it comes from her time. She trains large courses in the Sweet Adelines, and what she does as a coach and a judge is the course will hire her and then say, "Hey, so we want to work on this. We think we should be, working on our costumes or the sequins or the dance moves." They want something easy to fix, and companies come to me and they do the same thing. We want to learn how to be more confident. They want tricks to help them do what they do, and it's hard for people to accept the fact that you got to put in some work and it's on your information. And what my mom will say to them is like, "Listen, you're not getting the resonance out of your vocals." And until you do that at the highest level, your lipstick doesn't matter. Your sequins don't matter. The dance steps don't matter. And that's the same as me. It's like you can pretty this up and you can put on the best suit and you can be super confident. But until you get the information in the right spot, none of that's really going to make a difference. And I've never worked with a company that had crappy slides and, not confident presenters and everybody's a mess, but they had the most clean, clear, beautiful information. It's the other way around every single time.
What's the danger? Thank you. What's the danger of too much passion or unbalanced passion?
What's interesting about passion is it's a razor's edge, right? If you're passionate about your opinions, people will then judge you on that. It's why political stuff is so heated right now, and you'll lose friendships because you can't justify why someone would be so passionate about something so stupid. And I've done that when people will come pitch me an idea. It's like if they're really passionate about the opinion of the idea and all of these things, it's like, okay, if you think it's that good, you're not smart, you shouldn't be in this business. I'll tell my assistant I don't want them coming and pitching me shows anymore. So I always tell people, be passionate about your facts, not your opinions. Let your opinions go without color. Your facts should be the things that you're most passionate about.
What are you most passionate about right now?
You know what? I really love helping people turn their message around. There's a moment when they feel like they're able to translate their idea into someone else's understanding. And I've seen that pain and that frustration on people's face because they believe in their product, business, or service, and they just can't quite get the reaction. And, I sold lots and lots of TV shows and nobody cares. But my very first client that I helped fix his presentation, he literally left me a voicemail saying, "You've changed my life." And for a guy like me, who's kind of an ego-driven dude, that's hard to not become addicted to. And so I'm kind of obsessed with like helping people find a way to deliver their message and simplify stuff. And it's just like, it's been such a thrill.
Awesome. In fact, you share a story inside about a plumbing contractor and not needing to rip out the pipes.
Yeah, because it was so cool for him the way he was able to deliver his message. And his business was so smart and so clever, but it was clunky every time he'd explain it. And I watched him right in front of my eyes as I worked on his pitch, and we were in this room with other people listening that never heard his pitch before, and just to see him hear it for the first time and watch people understand it, and then they wanted to talk to him about it in a way that they were engaged. It was a magical moment for me.
Beautiful. On that note, where can people go to find out more, to find your amazing book? And you've got a new podcast coming up that you're very excited about.
Yeah. So you can find me pretty easily at the3minuterule.com.
Mhm.
Or brantpinvidic.com
Mhm.
on any social media at Brant Pinvidic. So I'm pretty easy to track down that way. And my new podcast comes out pretty quick. It's called IPO, Ideas, People, and the Opportunity They Create. And it gives me a chance to come interview some of the, big iconic business people of the last, 25 years that have really changed the scope of business practices in our community. And I love talking about that kind of stuff with them and how they took a big idea and created big opportunities for people. So
Very,
there you
very
go.
cool. And Brad, can you spell out your name for us so that people can find your URL and so I can type it in and get them over to our website to get over to your website?
Yes, it's Brant Pinvidic, Brant Pinvidic.
And tell me I didn't call you Brad again.
No.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Brant, this has been so much fun. This has been really exciting. This has been a 3-minute hour. I love it.
I love it myself.
Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today?
Think simple. Simple is the new sexy. That's it.
Woohoo!
Woo! There you go.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the 3-minute rule, begin saying less to get more today and shine bright. Woohoo!
There we go.
Awesome,
Nice
my
timing.
friend. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
Thanks, brother.
All right.
All right, man. You
Take
got
care.
it.
Bye.
Bye.
I just had the most incredible time talking with Brant Pinvidic about the 3-minute rule. To find out more about how you can do less and achieve more, click here, subscribe below.